I'm Alice, 29 female. I live alone in a small, two-bedroom house I inherited from my grandmother, working as an archivist for the city's historical society. For my entire life, I've been the reliable, quiet daughter, the one who never caused trouble, while my younger brother Ethan was the star who could do no wrong. This is the story of how their obsession with his future led to them abandoning me, and how that abandonment led me to discover a secret my grandmother left behind. A secret that changed my life and showed my family what they had truly lost. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The decision to sell my grandmother's house wasn't an easy one. I'd lived there for 5 years, ever since she passed away, and every corner of it was filled with memories of her. She was my anchor, the one person in my family who saw me for who I was, not for who I wasn't. But the house was old, the upkeep was expensive, and it was located on the far side of town, a grueling 45-minute commute from my job at the archives. I had finally saved enough for a down payment on a small condo downtown, a place that was mine, built on my own efforts. The sale of Grandma Rose's house would cover the rest and give me a small nest egg to start my new life, free from the constant, low-level financial anxiety that had been my companion for years. When I announced the move at our weekly Sunday dinner, the reaction was predictable. My mother, Helen, immediately started talking about the condo's investment potential, her boutique owner sensibilities kicking in. "You need to make sure the homeowners association fees aren't too high, Alice," she'd said, barely looking up from her phone where she was likely scrolling through designer catalogs. "And the resale value in that district is key." My father, Richard, a financial advisor who measured life in quarterly earnings, nodded in agreement. "She's right. Don't get emotional about the purchase. It's a transaction." The only one who seemed genuinely happy for me was my brother, Ethan. "That's awesome, Alice, a downtown condo, you'll be living the life." But his enthusiasm, as always, was fleeting. His attention was quickly diverted back to his own world, his grades, his friends, and most importantly, his soccer. At 20 years old, Ethan was the center of my parents' universe. He was on a sports scholarship at the state university, and his team was on a winning streak. His successes were family successes. His failures, which were rare, were family crises. My role in the family was that of the supporting infrastructure. I was the one who remembered birthdays, organized holiday gatherings, and listened patiently to my mother's complaints about suppliers or my father's anxieties about the stock market. I was the reliable one, the responsible one, the boring one. Because of this, when I mentioned I'd need help with the move, they all eagerly volunteered. "Of course, we'll help," my mother declared, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "We're family." "We wouldn't let you hire expensive movers," my dad chimed in. "We'll rent a truck. Richard and I can handle the heavy furniture, and your mother can help with the kitchen boxes. It'll be a family effort." The plan was set for a Saturday, 2 weeks away. I spent every evening after work meticulously packing. My life as an archivist had made me incredibly organized. I labeled every box with a color-coded system, created a detailed inventory, and planned the layout of the new condo down to the inch. I wanted the moving day to be as smooth and efficient as possible for everyone. I bought pizza and drinks, planned for breaks, and felt a rare flicker of warmth at the thought of my family rallying around me. It felt like, for once, they were showing up for me in a tangible way. My grandmother, Rose, would have been skeptical. "Promises are cheap, Alice," she used to say, her hands busy in her garden. "Actions are the only currency that matters." She knew my family's dynamics better than anyone. She saw how my parents' attention was a spotlight that rarely strayed from Ethan. She was the one who encouraged my love for history, who bought me my first set of archival gloves, and who told me that my quiet strength was a gift, not a weakness. The small locket she gave me for my 16th birthday, a simple silver oval with a tiny, intricate key design etched on it, never left my neck. She told me it was a key to my future, a cryptic phrase I'd always cherished but never fully understood. It felt like a secret just between us. In the days leading up to the move, the family group chat was full of logistics. My dad confirmed he'd booked the rental truck. My mom asked what kind of pizza everyone wanted. Ethan sent a thumbs-up emoji. Everything seemed be on track. The day before the move, I disassembled my bed frame, wrapped my grandmother's antique mirror in bubble wrap, and stacked the last of the boxes neatly by the door. The house looked hollow and strange, an empty shell of the home it had once been. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was overshadowed by the excitement for my new beginning. I sent one last text to the family chat. All packed and ready for tomorrow. See you all at 9 a.m. Can't thank you enough for this. My dad replied with a simple, see you then. My mom sent a heart emoji. I went to bed that night feeling grateful, allowing myself to believe that this time, things would be different. I ignored the faint echo of my grandmother's warning, convincing myself that this was a new chapter, not just for me, but for my relationship with my family. It was a foolish hope, and the foundation of that hope was about to be shattered by a single phone call. I woke up on moving day at 6 a.m., long before my alarm was set to go off. A mix of adrenaline and anxiety had me up and making coffee as the sun began to cast a pale, gray light through the empty living room. The house was eerily silent, the stacked boxes standing like silent sentinels, waiting. I double-checked my lists, made sure the path to the door was clear, and laid out bottles of water for everyone. By 8:45 a.m., I was sitting on the front steps, sipping my now-cold coffee, eagerly watching the street for my parents' car or the rental truck. 9 o'clock came and went. Then 9:15. I sent a quick text to the group chat, hey, just checking in, everything okay? A minute later, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. Running a few minutes behind, sweetie. Dad is just getting the truck now. I felt a small knot of irritation but pushed it down. Things happen. Delays are normal on moving days. I busied myself by moving some of the lighter boxes into the garage to make more room inside. At 9:45, my phone rang. It was my mother again, but this time her voice had a frantic, overly cheerful edge that I knew from experience was a red flag. Alice, honey, so a little change of plans. I braced myself. What kind of change? I asked, my voice flat. Well, you know how Ethan's team has been doing so well? They just announced that a major scout from a professional league is going to be at his game today. It's a huge opportunity for him, just massive. We just found out this morning. The air went still. I could hear the distant sound of a lawnmower, the birds chirping, all the normal sounds of a Saturday morning, but they felt a million miles away. His game, I repeated slowly. His game is today. I thought it was tomorrow. I knew it was today, of course. We had planned the move around it. The game was supposed to be in the evening, long after we would have finished. It is, she said quickly. But they moved the time up to noon because of the scout's schedule. And we have to be there, Alice, all of us, for a pre-game brunch with the team and the scout. It's at 10:30. We have to leave now to make it. You understand, don't you? This could be life-changing for your brother. I felt the blood drain from my face. Mom, the entire move was planned for today. The truck, everything you all promised. The words came out colder than I intended. I know, sweetie, and we feel just terrible about it, she said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime chance for Ethan. A move can be rescheduled. An opportunity like this can't. Your father and I just don't think we can do both. We need to be there to support him. What about the truck? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Your father is canceling it now. They give a full refund if you cancel within a few hours. It was the casual, matter-of-fact way she said it that broke something inside me. They hadn't just bylaid. They had efficiently dismantled the entire plan without a moment's thought for my situation. I was a logistical problem to be solved, and they had solved it by simply deleting me from their schedule. So, what am I supposed to do? I asked, the helplessness in my voice making me angry. I have to be out of this house by tomorrow night. The new owners are doing their final walkthrough on Monday morning. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Alice, she sighed, her patience clearly wearing thin. Just call some movers. I'm sure you can find someone last minute. We'll chip in for it. Just send us the bill. I could hear my dad in the background, his voice muffled but firm. Helen, we have to go. Then Ethan's voice, loud and clear. Is that Alice? Tell her I'm sorry. I'll make it up to her. I didn't want him to make it up to me. I wanted my family to keep a promise, just once. I have to go, honey, my mom said, her voice shifting back to its cheerful, dismissive tone. We're so proud of you for the new condo. We'll come and see it as soon as we can. Good luck with everything. Love you. And then she hung. Gee up. I stood in the silent house, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the dial tone. The silence was deafening. It wasn't just that they had canceled, it was the ease with which they had done it. My major life event, the culmination of years of saving and planning, was a minor inconvenience to be brushed aside for Ethan's potential glory. I was the responsible one, so they assumed I would responsibly handle being abandoned. I sank onto the floor, surrounded by the perfectly labeled boxes that represented my life. For a few minutes, I just sat there, paralyzed by a cold, quiet rage that was deeper than any anger I had ever felt before. The warmth I'd felt the night before had vanished, replaced by an icy certainty. My grandmother was right. Actions are the only currency that matters, and their actions had told me my exact worth. I was worth less than a soccer game. That realization was a bitter pill, but as the shock wore off, it hardened into something else: resolve. They told me to call movers. Fine, I would call movers. I would handle this myself. And I would pay for it myself because I would never, ever give them the satisfaction of chipping in. This was my problem now, and I would solve it alone. The first hour after that phone call was a blur of frantic energy. My anger had morphed into a desperate, pragmatic panic. I had to be out of the house in less than 36 hours. I grabbed my laptop and started searching for last-minute moving companies, my fingers flying across the keyboard. The first few calls were brutal. A full house move? For today? Ma'am, we're booked solid for weeks. We might be able to help, but there's a significant same-day emergency surcharge. We don't have the crew available on such short notice. Every rejection felt like another slap in the face. The prices I was quoted were astronomical, nearly triple what a scheduled move would have cost. I felt a wave of despair wash over me. My carefully planned budget was about to be obliterated. I had a choice: drain my savings, the little nest egg I was so proud of, or go into debt. It felt like a punishment for my family's carelessness. Finally, on my 8th or 9th call, I found a company that could help. A to B Movers, the man on the phone said, his voice gruff but professional. We had a cancellation this morning. I can have a crew of 3 and a truck at your place in an hour, but it's going to cost you our emergency rate. He named a price that made my stomach clench, but I had no other options. Fine, I said, my voice tight. Just get here. When the movers arrived, their foreman, a sturdy man in his late 40s named Dave, gave me a sympathetic look. Family bail on you? He asked, glancing at the meticulously stacked boxes. I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Happens more than you think, he said with a sigh. Don't worry, we'll get you sorted. True to his word, he and his crew were incredibly efficient. They worked like a well-oiled machine, loading boxes and furniture with a speed and precision that was almost dizzying to watch. I directed them, feeling like a stranger in my own home, the familiar rooms emptying out at an alarming rate. The day wore on, a grueling marathon of lifting, carrying, and coordinating. By late afternoon, only the largest, heaviest items remained in my bedroom: the old, solid oak dresser and the bed frame. Dave and another mover, a younger guy named Kevin, were carefully maneuvering the dresser away from the wall it had sat against for as long as I could remember. It had been my grandmother, S, and before her, my great-grandmother's. It had never been moved, not even for painting. As they scraped it across the hardwood floor, there was a loud, hollow thud. Whoa, careful, Dave said, stopping. Did you hit the wall? Kevin shook his head. No, I think the leg of the dresser did. He pointed to a spot on the plaster wall about 2 feet up from the floorboards. There was a fresh, deep gouge in the paint, but underneath something was wrong. There was a perfectly straight, dark line. It looked like a crack, but it was too precise, too clean. Dave leaned in, his brow furrowed. He knocked on the wall next to the line, producing a solid, dull sound. Then he knocked on the wall right beside the line. The sound was completely different, hollow, resonant. Well, what do you know? He murmured, running a hand over the spot. There's something in here. My curiosity piqued, I walked over. He was right. It felt like knocking on a door. Using the edge of a screwdriver from his toolkit, Dave carefully scraped away some of the plaster along the straight line. It flaked off easily, revealing the clean metal edge of what looked like a small door, perfectly flush with the wall and plastered over so seamlessly it was invisible. After a few minutes of careful work, he had uncovered the outline of a small, square metal panel, about 1.5 feet wide. In the center was a SMA. LL, circular dial and a keyhole, both painted over to match the wall. "It's a wall safe," Dave said, stepping back with a low whistle. "An old one, never seen one hidden this well before." I stared at it, completely bewildered. A safe? In my grandmother's bedroom? She had never mentioned it. My parents, who had helped clear out her things after she passed, had obviously never found it either. It was a secret hidden in plain sight for decades. "Can you open it?" I asked, my heart starting to beat a little faster. Dave examined the dial. "It's a combination lock, but it also has a keyhole. Without one or the other, you'd need a locksmith, maybe even a safe cracker, to get into this without destroying it." A keyhole? My hand instinctively went to my neck, my fingers closing around the small, silver locket my grandmother had given me. "A key to your future." The phrase echoed in my mind. It had always been just a sweet, sentimental saying. But now I wasn't so sure. My fingers fumbled with the clasp of the necklace. I opened the locket. Tucked inside, in the space where a tiny photo should be, was a small, ornate, and very real key. It wasn't just a design etched on the outside. It was a functional key, flat and silver, with a uniquely shaped tip. It was so small I'd never even thought to take it out. With trembling hands, I held the locket out to Dave. "Do you think?" He took it, his eyes widening as he looked from the key to the keyhole. "I'll be darned," he said softly. He gently worked the tiny key from its nesting place inside the locket and approached the safe. He slid it into the keyhole. It was a perfect fit. He turned it and we heard a soft, satisfying click. The dial on the safe, which had been frozen, now turned freely, but it didn't open. "It's a 2-part lock," Dave explained. "The key unlocks the mechanism, but you still need the combination to open the door." My heart sank. A combination. My grandmother had taken that secret with her. The safe was unlocked, but it was still sealed. It was a tantalizing mystery with no solution. Dave patted my shoulder. "Don't worry. A good locksmith can probably figure out the combo now that the key lock is disengaged. It'll be a lot easier." He handed me back my locket, minus the key, which remained in the safe door. I looked at the safe, a piece of my grandmother's hidden life now exposed in the wall of my empty room. My family's betrayal had forced me into this frantic, expensive move. But in doing so, they had inadvertently led me to a secret I never would have found. For the first time all day, a feeling other than anger or despair began to bubble up inside me. A profound, electrifying curiosity. What was my grandmother hiding? And why was it so important that she left the key with me, and only me? The movers finished their work late that evening, leaving me in my new, sterile condo surrounded by a mountain of boxes. The exhaustion was bone deep, but sleep was impossible. My mind was back in my old house, fixated on the small, gray safe embedded in the wall. The movers had carefully repositioned the heavy oak dresser in front of it at my request, hiding it from view until I could figure out what to do. I had to hand over the keys to the old house by the next evening. The clock was ticking. The combination. Where would my grandmother hide a combination? Rose was not a woman who did things randomly. She was meticulous, thoughtful, and loved puzzles and history, qualities she had passed down to me. The combination wouldn't be a random string of numbers. It would mean something. It would be a clue, a final puzzle she had left for me to solve. I spent that first night in my new home not unpacking, but excavating my memories. I sat on the floor with a notepad and a pen, jotting down every significant date I could associate with her. Her birthday, her wedding anniversary, the day my grandfather passed, the date she bought the house. I tried to think of addresses, old phone numbers, anything that could be translated into a sequence of numbers. The next morning, armed with a list of about 20 different combinations, I drove back to the empty house for the last time. The silence was profound, amplifying the sound of my own footsteps on the bare floors. I moved the dresser aside, revealing the safe. My hands were shaking as I knelt and began to try the combinations, turning the dial with painstaking slowness. Right to the first number, left past it to the second, right to the third. I tried her birthday. Nothing. Her anniversary. Nothing. I went through my entire list, my hope dwindling with each failed attempt. The heavy steel door remained stubbornly shut. Frustrated, I sat back on my heels, staring at the impassive metal square. What was I missing? I thought about my grandmother's personality. She was sentimental, but she was also deeply pragmatic. What numbers truly defined her life? My eyes drifted around the empty room, and I noticed something I saw. Dient before. The wall where the safe was located was the same wall her bed had always been against. And right above where her pillow would have been, there were 3 faint, almost invisible nail holes in the plaster. For years, a small, framed piece of embroidery had hung there. It was one of the first things she ever made, a simple sampler with the alphabet, numbers, and a short verse. When we cleared out the house, my mother had dismissed it as old and faded, suggesting we donate it. But I couldn't part with it. I had carefully wrapped it and packed it away. It was in a box labeled keepsakes that was now sitting in my new living room. A sudden jolt of intuition, sharp and clear, shot through me. I didn't even stop to push the dresser back. I locked the house, drove the 45 minutes to my new condo in a state of feverish excitement, and tore through the sea of boxes until I found the one I was looking for. I unwrapped the embroidered sampler with trembling fingers. It was simple, the thread faded from decades of sunlight. At the bottom, beneath a stitched image of a small house and a garden, was the verse, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." Matthew 6:21. My grandmother wasn't a particularly religious woman, but she loved the poetry of certain biblical verses. I looked closer at the stitching. It was her handwriting in thread. My eyes scanned the numbers she had stitched along the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. And then I saw it. 3 of the numbers were stitched with a slightly different colored thread, a pale gold instead of the standard white. The difference was so subtle that if you weren't looking for it, you'd never notice. The numbers were 6, 2, and 1. 6:21, Matthew 6:21. It wasn't a date, it was a reference. The verse itself was the clue. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. My heart pounded in my chest. This had to be it. The combination was the chapter and verse number. 621, but most combinations have 3 numbers. I looked back at the sampler. What was I missing? Then I realized. The reference itself was 2 numbers. What would the third be? I thought about the way combinations worked. Right, left, right, maybe it was simpler. I looked at the 3 numbers stitched in gold thread, 6, 2, 1, not 6 and 21, 3 distinct numbers, 6, 2, 1. Could it really be that simple? It felt too obvious, but it was the only lead I had. I raced back to the old house, the sampler on the passenger seat next to me. My hands were slick with sweat as I knelt before the safe one last time. I took a deep breath, trying to channel my grandmother's calm, steady nature. I turned the dial to the right, stopping at 6. I spun it to the left, passing 6 once, and stopped on 2. Then I turned it right again, directly to 1. I paused, my fingers resting on the cold dial. I pulled the small handle. There was a low clunk, a release of pressure, and the heavy door swung open with a faint groan. I peered inside. The interior of the safe was small, no bigger than a shoebox, and lined with faded red velvet. It wasn't filled with cash or jewels as I might have fantasized. Instead, there were 2 items. The first was a thick, leather-bound journal. The second was a stack of what looked like old stock certificates, tied together with a faded silk ribbon. On top of the stack was a simple, handwritten letter, the envelope addressed in my grandmother's familiar, elegant script. It just said one word, Alice. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just a hidden treasure. This was a message, a final conversation with the one person who had always truly seen me. I carefully lifted the journal and the letter out of the safe, my hands shaking. I left the stocks for now. The story, I knew, was in the words. I closed the safe door, pushed the dresser back into place one last time, and left my old house forever, clutching my grandmother's last secret to my chest. Back in my condo, the city lights twinkling outside my new window, I sat on the floor and carefully opened the letter. The paper was thick and creamy, and the ink had faded slightly over time. My grandmother's handwriting was as clear and steady as I remembered. "My dearest Alice," it began. "If you are reading this, it means you have found my little puzzle. I hope it didn't give you too much trouble. I always knew your sharp mind and patient heart would be the only things that could solve it. I left the key with you, and only you, for a reason. This safe contains two things. The first is my journal. It holds my stories, my truths, things I never said aloud. I want you to have them. Know your history, my girl. Know where you come from. The second is a bit more practical. Your great-grandfather, a man with more foresight than money, invested a small amount in a little-known technology company back in the 1970s. It was a gamble. He passed away before he ever saw it pay off, and the stock certificates were passed to me. For years, they were worth next to nothing. I almost threw them away a dozen times, but I held on, more for sentimental reasons than anything else. In recent years, as you know, technology has changed the world. That little company became a giant. These stocks are for you. They are your security, your freedom. They are a foundation that no one can take away from you. I have watched you navigate our family, my dear. I have seen your quiet strength, your resilience, and the way you give so much without asking for anything in return. I have also seen how your light is often dimmed to let another's shine brighter. I worry that your parents, in their focus on Ethan's very bright and loud future, sometimes forget to see the equally brilliant, albeit quieter, future you are building for yourself. Do not let them take this from you. This is your inheritance from me to you directly. It is the result of quiet patience and holding on to something of value, much like you. Use it to build a life that is entirely your own. Buy a home that makes you happy, travel, pursue your passions without worry. Be independent, be free. Your future is yours to write. With love that transcends time. Grandma Rose. Tears streamed down my face as I read her words. It was like hearing her voice again, a balm on the raw wound of my family's betrayal. She had seen it all, my role in the family, my parents' blindness, my quiet sacrifices, and she had planned for it. She had left me a legacy not of obligation, but of liberation. My hands trembled as I picked up the stack of stock certificates. The company name was one I recognized instantly. It was now a global tech behemoth, one of the most valuable corporations in the world. I had no idea how many shares there were or what they were worth, but my grandmother's letter suggested it was significant. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. My first stop was a major brokerage firm. I was nervous, feeling completely out of my element as I sat in a plush leather chair opposite a polished financial advisor, a man not much older than me. I explained the situation and handed him the certificates. He examined them, his professional composure slowly cracking as he realized what he was holding. He typed furiously into his computer, his eyes widening with every keystroke. Finally, he leaned back in his chair, took off his glasses, and looked at me as if seeing me for the first time. "Miss, I'm not sure if you are aware of the value of what you have here," he said, his voice hushed with awe. "After several stock splits over the decades and the company's current market value, these shares are worth, conservatively, just over $7 million. The number hung in the air, so vast and unreal it felt like a foreign language. $7 million. I felt my vision tunnel, the sound in the room fading to a low hum. I had been agonizing over a last-minute moving fee that was less than 0.1% of this amount. I had been stressing about my mortgage, my budget, my tiny nest egg. In an instant, every financial anxiety I had ever had, every constraint that had shaped my life, simply evaporated. I was no longer just independent, I was wealthy. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, the stock certificates safely deposited with the firm to begin the process of transferring them into my name. As the initial shock wore off, my grandmother's words echoed in my mind. "Do not let them take this from you." My thoughts immediately turned to my family. My mother's voice from the day before, telling me to just send the bill for the movers, rang in my ears. The casual dismissal, the assumption that my problems were small and easily handled. They had no idea. They had abandoned me in a moment of need, choosing my brother's fleeting chance at glory over their concrete promise to me. And in doing so, they had unwittingly cleared the path for me to discover a fortune they never knew existed. A plan began to form in my mind, not born of malice, but of a sudden, sharp clarity. My grandmother didn't want me to use this money to spite them. She wanted me to use it to be free of them and their expectations. The confrontation that was coming would not be about punishing them. It would be about emancipating myself. They had made their priorities clear. Now, I would make mine. I would give them exactly what they thought they wanted, and in doing so, I would show them the true cost of their choice. The first step was to open the safe again. This time, I would be taking everything out. A week passed. It was the quietest, most transformative week of my life. The brokerage firm confirmed the transfer of the stocks into a new portfolio under my name. The number in my bank account grew by a dizzying number of zeros. I met with a lawyer and a new financial advisor, people who worked for me, whose sole job was to protect my interests. On their advice, I set up a trust. I was building a forter. SS not of anger, but of independence. During that week, my family's attempts to contact me were predictably superficial. My mom sent a text, "Hope the move went okay. We have to celebrate Ethan's team winning. Dinner Sunday?" My dad sent a follow-up, "Let me know what we owe for the movers." Ethan sent a picture of himself at a party. I responded to them all with a polite, non-committal text. Move was challenging, but I handled it. I have something important to discuss with you all. Can you come to my new condo on Saturday afternoon? 3 p.m.? They agreed immediately, likely assuming I was going to present them with the moving bill and tell them about my new place. They had no idea they were walking into the final act of a play they didn't even know they were characters in. On Saturday, I was ready. My condo, which had been a sea of boxes, was now sparsely but elegantly furnished. I had hired a service to unpack and organize everything, a small luxury that felt like a seismic shift in my reality. At precisely 3 o'clock, my parents and Ethan arrived. They walked in, my mother immediately scanning the room with a critical eye. "Oh, it's cozy, Alice," she said, her tone implying small. My father nodded approvingly at the new construction. "Good investment. Smart." Ethan slumped onto the new sofa, already scrolling through his phone. "Thanks for coming," I began, my voice steady. My heart was calm. I was not the nervous, accommodating Alice they were used to. I wanted to talk about the move. My father immediately reached for his wallet. "Right, the movers, just tell me the damage." "The damage," I repeated softly, letting the word hang in the air, "was considerable, but not in the way you think. Your bailing on me set in motion a chain of events." I paused, letting them focus on me. The movers, in a rush to get the heavy furniture out, damaged the wall in my old bedroom. And when they did, they found something. I walked over to my new coffee table. On it sat the old, empty wall safe, its door slightly ajar. I had paid a handyman to carefully extract it from the wall of the old house that morning. My mother gasped. "What is that? Was that in the house the whole time?" "It was," I said. "It was Grandma Rose's, hidden in the wall, plastered over. No one knew it was there." They all stared at it, their minds clearly racing. A hidden safe. An inheritance. Their eyes lit up with a greedy curiosity. "What was in it?" Ethan asked, finally looking up from his phone, his interest piqued. "Did she leave money, jewelry?" "She left her journal," I said, holding up the leather-bound book. "And she left an inheritance." My father leaned forward, his professional financial advisor mask firmly in place. "An inheritance? Was there a will? We were the executors of her estate. Everything should have gone through us." "This wasn't part of the estate," I explained calmly. "This was separate. A gift left in secret." It was a stack of old stock certificates. My mother clapped her hands together. "Oh, Alice, that's wonderful. What are they worth? A few $1,000s? That would be a lovely little bonus for you." This was the moment, the pivot point on which my entire future relationship with them would turn. "They were worth a bit more than that," I said, my voice level. I had them appraised. The final value came to just over $7 million. The silence in the room was absolute. My mother's smile froze and then collapsed. My father's face went pale, his jaw slack. Ethan's phone clattered to the floor. "$7 million," my father stammered, his voice cracking. That's not possible." "It is," I said simply. "And Grandma Rose left it all to me. My mother found her voice first, a shrill, accusing tone. To you? Why just to you? That's family money, Alice. It should be shared. We're a family. Are we? I asked, the question sharp and genuine. A family that makes a promise and breaks it for a soccer game? A family that leaves one member to handle a crisis alone and then texts a few days later as if nothing happened? My dad stood up, trying to regain control. Now, let's not be hasty, Alice. Your grandmother was old. She probably wasn't thinking clearly. That kind of money needs to be managed properly. As a family, we can invest it, make it grow. No, I said, my voice cutting through his condescending tone. You will not be managing anything. This is mine. Her letter was very clear. She left it to me because she knew you would do exactly what you're doing right now, try to take control of it. I let that sink in. I could see the gears turning in their heads, the shock, the anger, the frantic calculations. This was not about fairness for them. It was about loss. They hadn't lost money they ever had, but they had lost control over me. I didn't call you here to debate this, I continued. I called you here to give you something. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single check. I slid it at her. The coffee table toward my father. This is for you, I said. He picked it up. His eyes widened as he read the amount. It was for the exact, exorbitant price of the last-minute movers. This is what you offered to chip in for, I said. It's the price of the moving company. It's the price of your broken promise. I want you to have it. Consider it a thank you. Because if you hadn't bylaid on me, I never would have hired those movers. I never would have moved that dresser. And I never would have found the safe. In a way, you gave me this gift. So this, I said, tapping the check, is all you will ever receive from it. This is your share of the inheritance. My mother stared at the check, then at me, her face a mask of furious disbelief. You can't be serious. You would choose money over your own family? You made that choice for me last Saturday, I replied, my voice devoid of emotion. You chose Ethan's game over me. You showed me exactly where I stand. I'm just accepting it. The true inheritance Grandma left me wasn't the money. It was the freedom to build a life based on my own choices, not on my obligations to you. And that's what I'm going to do. The aftermath of that confrontation was not loud and explosive, but cold and silent. My parents and brother left my condo without another word, the check sitting accusingly on the coffee table where my father had dropped it. The look in their eyes was a mixture of shock, fury, and a dawning, horrified understanding of what they had lost, not the money, but their power over me. The quiet, reliable Alice, the family's built-in support system, had been replaced by a woman they didn't recognize. A woman who held all the cards and had no intention of letting them play. In the days that followed, the silence from them was absolute. No angry phone calls, no pleading texts. It was as if, by refusing to play my assigned role, I had ceased to exist for them. The family group chat fell silent. Sunday dinners were, I assumed, canceled. It was a strange and hollow feeling at first, like the phantom limb of a lifelong obligation. But as the days turned into weeks, the hollowness was replaced by a profound sense of peace. I was no longer waiting for a text that would demand my time or emotional energy. I was no longer bracing myself for the casual dismissal or the passive-aggressive comparison to Ethan. I was, for the first time in my adult life, completely and utterly free. My grandmother's journal became my Bible. I spent my evenings reading her stories, learning about the woman I thought I knew. I learned about her struggles as a young wife, her secret passion for astronomy, her quiet defiance in a world that expected women to be small. I saw my own life mirrored in hers, my own quiet strengths reflected in her words. She wrote about my great-grandfather and his faith in technology, but more importantly, she wrote about her faith in me. Alice has a spine of steel forged in the quiet fires of observation, she wrote in one entry when I was just a teenager. They mistake her silence for weakness, but it is her greatest strength. She sees everything. Reading those words felt like a validation I never knew I needed. With my newfound financial freedom, I began to build a life that was truly my own. I didn't quit my job as an archivist. I loved the quiet, methodical work of preserving history. But now, I could pursue it on my own terms. I funded a project at the Historical Society that had been stalled for years due to lack of resources, the digitization of the city's oldest and most fragile documents. I established a small grant in my grandmother's name, the Rose Grant for Historical Preservation, to help other underfunded archives in the state. I was using her legacy to protect other people's legacies, and it felt like the most fitting tribute I could pay her. I traveled. I went to Florence to see the art we had studied in books. I walked the ancient streets of Rome. I sat in a Parisian cafe and read for an entire afternoon without looking at my watch. In each new place, I felt myself expanding, shedding the last vestiges of the dutiful, small version of myself I had been for so long. About 6 months after our last meeting, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my father. It wasn't an apology, not really. It was more of a financial statement of regret. He wrote about how Ethan's professional soccer prospects hadn't panned out. The scout had been impressed but hadn't made an offer. The pressure had gotten to Ethan, and his grades were slipping. My mother's boutique was struggling. The letter was a clinical, passionless accounting of their misfortunes, with the unspoken question hanging between every line: "Will you help us?" I read the letter and felt a faint, distant sadness for them. They were trapped in a world of their own making, a world where value was measured in success, in scholarships, in profit margins. They had gambled everything on one shin. Ing Star, and they had no backup plan. They had treated me like an insurance policy, and when they finally needed to cash it in, they discovered the policy had been canceled long ago. I did not reply to the letter. Instead, I made a final, anonymous donation. I set up a scholarship fund at the state university for students who, like Ethan, were struggling to balance athletics and academics, but it was for those in underrepresented, non-revenue sports. It was a nod to the fact that talent and hard work exist everywhere, not just in the spotlight. My true inheritance, I realized, was never the money. It was the clarity that came with it. It was the permission my grandmother gave me to finally put myself first. My family's betrayal on moving day was not the cause of our rift, but merely the symptom of a sickness that had been festering for years. They didn't break our family. They just revealed that it had been broken all along. As I sit here today, in a home that I own, in a life that I have built, I no longer feel anger toward them. I just feel separate. They are a chapter in my history, one that I have archived, labeled, and put away. My grandmother's locket still hangs around my neck, but the key is no longer inside. It's out now, and it has unlocked a future far more valuable than any amount of money. It has unlocked me.